I never planned to move 1,900 miles away. In fact, I never even planned to leave our first house. We were young, proud homeowners, still in our 20s, when we bought it. It felt like a victory after everything we've been through, and for 3 years, it was. Everything I wanted until it wasn't. In 2013, my parents lost their farm. The 2008 crash had finally caught up to them. They had nowhere to go, and since we had the space, it was just assumed they'd move in with us. The problem was we didn't actually have enough bedrooms, and they slept in the foyer. And suddenly, I felt like a child in my own home again. Living with my parents brought me straight back to my childhood, hiding away from my dad, shutting myself in my room, avoiding him at all costs. Now, I was doing the same thing as an adult. This wasn't just any house, it was my house, and yet I was back to hiding. On top of that, we were falling behind. Even with both of us working full-time, we weren't making enough. The bills kept piling up, and we were getting dangerously close to losing everything. Within just a couple of months of having a new baby and my parents moving in, we listed the house. We had no choice. The plan was simple: sell our first house and buy a new one. But of course, nothing ever goes according to plan. We found a house, a weird one that had been split decades ago into a front rental unit and a larger section in back. The idea was that my parents could live in the front and help with the mortgage. That didn't happen. First, our loan officer completely screwed up. I still don't know exactly what they did wrong, but whatever it was, it derailed everything. Then while we were scrambling to fix the mess, my husband lost his job. Suddenly, the bank didn't even want to give us a loan anymore. We were stuck in limbo, homeless for 2 months. Thankfully, one of my husband's co-workers, Tim, saved us. He moved in with his girlfriend and let us crash at his house. While his stuff was still there, and he didn't have to do that, but he did. And I'll never forget it. Thank you, Tim. Meanwhile, our realtor, Sarah, was doing everything she could to salvage the deal. To this day, I have no idea how she pulled it off. Even she later admitted she wasn't sure about selling us that house. It was in such bad shape that I don't even think a conventional loan would have touched it. But somehow, she got us in with an FHA loan. And just like that, we had a house again. But was it really an upgrade? The first time I stepped inside, I immediately regretted it. I barely made it through the front door before turning around and running back out. No, I said. But my husband, the practical one, thought we could make it work. The only truly livable bedroom was downstairs, and my parents took it. That left me, my husband, and our kids all sleeping in the living room. One single rotten room. And upstairs, it was completely rotten. We didn't know the extent until we started demolishing it. We hadn't even realized how bad it was until we had already been stuck there. I was already overwhelmed living in a house that wasn't safe, but things with my parents made it worse. There are some things I don't want to talk about yet. But it got bad. Bad enough that after we moved in, I had no choice but to quit my job. I had worked so hard to help support our family, but suddenly I was at home, which wasn't a bad thing. We thought moving my parents into the front apartment would help financially. And instead, they took over our space and I lost my independence. When we bought the second house, it already had tenants living in the front. At first, we thought about waiting until they moved out before moving in ourselves, but that would have taken even longer. And after 2 months of being homeless, 6 people crammed into a 600 square foot house, we were done waiting. So we made the choice to just move in with them still there. That was a mistake. These weren't just any tenants. They were hoarders, chain-smoking, trash-collecting, absolutely disgusting hoarders. If you don't smoke, you already know how bad cigarette smell is, but when you're pregnant, it's unbearable. Oh, and within that time, I was pregnant again. And the worst part, there wasn't even a real wall separating our unit from theirs, just a thin cardboard door. One of the tenants, an older woman, would literally open the thin cardboard door to her side of the house, stick her head into the hallway, and call out, "Hello, hello, hello," like she lived there. That was super awkward. The first time that happened, we were wondering, where's that coming from? We didn't realize that the door was latched on her side and she had access to our side. And as soon as we moved in, she suddenly decided everything in her apartment needed fixing. On our dime, but I guess that's what we get for not having moved the renters out before we moved in. Lesson learned. Meanwhile, we were trying to demo the upstairs, and at one point I threw out an old cardboard box, and that set off the other tenant. I don't know what they were holding onto or why, but they acted like the house was theirs. They had cigarette butts everywhere, random junk piled up, and when I started cleaning and throwing things into the dumpster, they were furious. But at the end of the day, it was our mortgage, not theirs. The cigarette smoke would bellow in through the cardboard doors. I would be outside and they would be smoking, and it would waft around to where I was. There were thousands of cigarette butts on the ground, and it took me months to clean all that up. I think we were there about 2 months, and I, the owner of the house, had never seen the front that we had bought. The woman let me into her house. The smell of cat, dog, and cigarette smoke all mixed together. I was on the verge of losing my lunch. I'm extremely sensitive to smells, and the apartment was really bad. And things were packed up on the walls. There were black rings on everything, floors and the walls. Thankfully, after a few months, they finally moved out. But even after that, we were stuck with the house. And things with my parents, let's just say, it got worse. After a year, they were finally out too. At that point, it should have been a fresh start. The tenants were gone, my parents were gone, and the house was finally ours. but something still felt wrong. I hated that house, and I felt like I was pressured into it. It wasn't my house. I felt punished for my parents' poor decisions, for having to move to a place I despised. We were finally a little better financially, but not much. My husband had moved from one job to the next, doing what he was already doing. He handed over his clients to the new company and brought everyone over with him, but then the job double-crossed him. They demoted him, and they didn't appreciate him at all. They didn't learn his true value until he was gone. He was stressed, I was stressed. It was not a good time in our marriage. We should have been happy. We had beautiful babies and our health, but it was a lot. Then a couple years after moving in, my brother died on Thanksgiving Day. And that changed everything. Up until that day, I had bottled everything up. I never felt safe expressing my emotions, not even to my husband. The truth is, I didn't know how to. I was never allowed to feel sadness, joy, or excitement. The only emotion I ever been allowed to feel was fear. I didn't realize how much I had buried inside of me, just trying to make it to the next day. The day he died, my world shattered. It hit me like a truck, and suddenly I wasn't holding anything together, not the house, not my family, and not myself. Years after his death, something shifted. I don't think I've ever fully explained why we moved, not even now, why I suddenly felt this urgency to get out. It wasn't a long-term plan, it wasn't years of saving and preparing, it was a matter of weeks. That second house, the one I had ran out of, the one that never felt like home, we had put enough sweat equity into it. We had even taken out a mortgage months prior, planning to buy another house and sell the second house to move closer to my husband's job. Things happened and I was done. I started looking out of state, all over the U.S. I hate the cold and I love being outside, but the place I found, it was cheap enough for us to afford. So we put in an offer. It was sight unseen and it was accepted. And suddenly I was freaking out. Had I just made the right choice for my family or the biggest mistake of our lives? Before we could even think about hauling a car trailer 1,900 miles, I had to install a trailer brake controller into the truck. Because, stopping is kind of important. Otherwise, we'd just be a runaway freight train. And as much as I like a good adrenaline rush, barreling down a mountain with no brakes wasn't exactly on my bucket list. Now, installing this thing should have been easy. Plug it in, mount it, done. But no, that would be too simple. Instead, it turned into a full-blown wrestling match between me, the wiring, and the incredibly inconvenient placement of everything. Ever try to fit underneath a dashboard while holding a flashlight with your face, using both hands to connect wires, and questioning all of your life choices at the same time? Yeah, that was me. Meanwhile, my husband, he was doing what he does best, playing real-life Tetris with our stuff. We had a lot to fit in the trailer, a car, a wardrobe I had picked up in San Francisco right before the Rona, 6 chickens, a rooster, a dog, a bunny, and somehow my husband made it all fit. Every gas station stop turned into a spectacle, thanks to Rocky the rooster, who made sure to announce our arrival at every single stop. People had questions, a lot of them. At one point, I realized we must have looked like the Beverly Hillbillies, just minus the oil fortune at the end of the journey. If you've never seen that show, imagine a truck packed to the absolute limit, farm animals included, rolling down the highway while people stared in either amazement or mild concern. That was us. We had a deadline, the goal, get to the house in time for the fireworks show. Something fun for the kids to take their minds off the fact that we had just moved and completely uprooted their lives. Once we finally arrived, my husband jumped straight into rewiring the house because, fun fact, the electrical hadn't been updated since the 1920s when it was installed. And as much as I love historic homes, burning down an electrical fire wasn't on my renovation vision board. We also picked up lumber because the carriage house, yeah, that thing was months away from collapsing completely. Now, was what we were doing technically the right way to do it? No. But at that point, the goal was just to keep it standing. About a day after we arrived, my husband made a discovery. Under my car, he found a stray cat, skinny, sickly, and clearly having a rough time. Her eyes were foggy, probably from a sinus infection, and she looked up at us with this unimpressed expression, like she was personally offended by the state of her life. And because we're us, we suddenly had one more member in our ever-growing chaos crew. Moving 1,900 miles, we knew the weather would be different, but not like this. Back home, rain was a rare event. Here, it came down in a monsoon-level sheets. We had no rain gear, so my husband improvised, cutting holes in a contractor garbage bag and wearing it like some sort of DIY poncho. Did it work? Mostly. And this is why I love the guy. Have you ever made a garbage bag poncho or grocery bag rain boots?